Welcome to The Healthy Hustle, hosted by us. Our hope for this show is to create something we didn't have during the come up. A community that supports a balance of growth and feel good, rush and recharge. The magic is in the dichotomy. And holy smokes, did it take us a long time to figure that out. Learn from our missteps, grow with our advice, because the work doesn't have to hurt. This is The Healthy Hustle. Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Hustle podcast. I'm Maribeth Dodd.
I'm Mandy Bowles.
And we're excited for this episode today. So we're going to talk about what it looks like to actually get things done, the things that we want to do, reaching our goals, going after the things that we want. At the same time, the process of getting there isn't always easy, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the process of how we've evolved over time as our careers have progressed, as our kids have grown, and then maybe some of the mom guilt, some of the other things that come along the way.
Perfectly imperfect.
Yes, exactly. So, this sort of topic came up this week. I was just kind of hustling around the house trying to get some stuff done. And I was frantically folding a bunch of clothes before I got on a Zoom call. And I was folding a sheet. And I realized, which was not weird for me, but I realized if someone else was looking in that it would be weird for them, that I'm folding this fitted sheet. And I think there's like a way to fold these, but I never paid attention to that and I don't have time to think about it. And so I was literally like wadding up this sheet and putting it into like a ball where I was going to like then shove it into a linen closet, just sort of in an area, like it had an area it was going to be in. But it was super messy. And so I remember telling you, Mandy, because I was just like, okay, this is a realization of mine that there are these little things like that I do that some of my friends would be like appalled by. And yet it's like the survival little things that I do to be able to continue to do the other things that I want to do.
And when you called me and you were like, Mandy, like I just had this epiphany and there's so many things that I do that get me through. And it's so funny when you told me about the fitted sheet thing, because it's exactly what I do.
Oh, I feel way better now.
Yes.
I feel way better. Well, and I'm just thinking like, with having a career and juggling a lot of things, sometimes people say to you, wow, I don't know how you do it all, especially based on what they see on social media.
Correct.
Because I'm not usually putting a picture of the fitted sheet on social media. Maybe I should, but I'm not putting that out there. But the other stuff I am putting out, people have a tendency to look on the outside and go, wow, how do you do it all? And I want to be like, here's how I do it all, quote unquote, is by not doing some things that you would think are really important. And maybe for some people they are, For
some people, I think they are. And I think I've learned over the time, if you have all kinds of time, you're going to easily find a way to fill that time, versus when you don't have the time, you find a way to make things work just as well. And I think I have some type A tendencies, right? I was like too much of a perfectionist growing up. But then I think I learned how to evolve that over time, where there's some things that literally can make you crazy if you obsess over them and everything has to be perfect. And the reality of it is, if that's the standard we always hold ourselves to, sometimes when we're doing it all, we're going to always feel like we're failing. So I think that we've kind of learned how to safeguard ourselves from that, right?
Yeah. Because you can go crazy doing that. I remember years ago, it was actually when we had our third kid, I could not keep up with my house. And I remember looking around and being like embarrassed, like how in the world am I supposed to do this and juggle my career and everything else? And I got online and I remember typing in and trying to figure out like, okay, did I already share this story?
No.
Okay. Okay. So I remember getting online and Googling, how do you keep a clean house when you have 3 kids? And immediately there was this title of an article that came up and it said, here's how you keep a clean house when you have 3 kids. And I was like, yes, I just found this like pot of gold. I click on the article. I'm so excited to bring it up. There was like a bunch of ads. I scroll through the ads. I open it up and I'm like, okay, here we go. And it literally said, here are the 3 words that are going to change everything as it relates to this. And I was like, okay. And I opened it up and it said, lower your standards. And I was like, no, that is not what I was looking for. But that was the reality. And it was like, figure out what can you obsess over and make perfect and what do you have to just let go. And that was just like almost like a pattern that would have been like, 14 years ago now, but that was like a pattern that I then sort of laid into place to realize, I can't keep my house the same way I did before I was this busy or before I traveled or before I had the third kid or whatever. Like, I just can't do that anymore. And so you have to pick and choose.
Completely. I think too, what's interesting about me is I have never been that perfect housekeeper. Like, I was the tornado growing up, right? So I get married at 22 and I'm a Actually, I had learned how to clean my house on Saturdays before I got married, but still it was just messy. You know, I'd throw everything everywhere. I remember, you know, being a 22-year-old mom and going into my closet and there would be crap everywhere.
Literal crap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuff. There'd be stuff everywhere. Okay. There would be stuff.
Okay.
And it was just like, you know, that's also hard. And so I think it's funny because there's also things you grow up and evolve out of, because I did grow up and evolve out of that and became more particular, but also learning how to not obsess, because I can be that personality type that's like, when you're going to do something, you do something, you're the extremist. And I find myself in that often, not as much now that I've grown up and evolved and I've learned, like, you can't be extreme and it's never sustainable no matter what you do, right? But just learning that you can go in, you can put your clothes away. Like, if your outfit doesn't work, you can just like put it on a hanger. Maybe it doesn't go in the exact spot in the closet, but it's not on the floor anymore. So that's a little win for me, right?
That's
cleaning my shower in the shower, little things like that. And then not letting dishes pile up. Oh, and paper plates. Those are my best friend.
Oh, yeah.
And
Same.
I'm like somewhat crunchy, but I try not to think about the formaldehyde on the plates because it's going to save me time at night.
Shoot, I didn't know that was on there.
Well, now you know.
I just put paper plates. Here's a tip. I put paper plates on top of the stack of plates that's in our cupboard. And so, like, that is where you get your plate from. It's going to be a paper plate for a long time before you hit a real plate.
Yes.
So that was an evolution. So let's talk about like how things have evolved for us then. So like, I know we've shared that, like, especially early in our careers and we were like figuring things out, like it was a lot and we had to find those handles, like the paper plates or whatever, and those tools and things to like make it tolerable. Right.
Yeah. For sure.
So what did that look like for you early days?
So for me as a young mom with 2 little boys that went to daycare and then preschool every single morning, we ate in the car. Like, and that sounds terrible, right? I cannot think of a morning where I actually fed them during the week. I'm sure I did, but most of their breakfasts were on the go. They had a 25 minute drive to the babysitter. And I knew if I took that time to give them breakfast, then was going to break loose and then I would be running late. So if I could get them in their car seats, we could either drive through McDonald's or a Pop-Tart, which I would not do that now, but it was how I survived, and then picking them up at dinner time. Sometimes it was like a drive up to where I could, let them eat on the way home so we could go through like quality time and having fun together. So it wasn't like, okay, let me hurry up and get you a meal and prepare and clean this up and then just put you to bed. And so those were the little things I did just to survive. Because when I was a young mom, my husband had, he was also a fireman. And so he was on 24 on, 24 off, 24 on. So I was single momming it a lot and sometimes still traveling as a working mom. And so just trying to find the ways that I could survive. And then I'd clean my house at 2 a.m. And I don't do that anymore either.
Wow. That's impressive. I know. I feel like there's different seasons where you either have more time or you have more money.
Yes.
So I look back and I think early in career and kids that Chris and I would work opposite hours, basically. Like somebody was working from like 6 a.m. until at least midnight and it was opposite. And we just made it work with what we could. Or we would, ask friends for a favor to help with the kids or, even to come and support us in like some kind of project or something we were doing at work. But then as time rolled on, it was like, there were certain seasons where it was like, okay, it makes sense to now pay for this. So like, same as you, I don't clean my house at 2 a.m. anymore. No. I preferably don't clean it much at all because I'll try to, bring somebody in to clean it. And there was a season where we had a nanny and that was how we got through, for several years. We had somebody that was in the home helping with day-to-day things and, keeping kids and a godsend in that time. Yeah. Which was great. So even though my kids are so much bigger, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should go back to that.
Pretty good idea.
Yes.
I know when I was getting ready to be promoted for work, it was a time where we didn't know how we were going to make it work. We didn't have family right there. And we didn't have very many people we could call on to help. There would be times I'd get on a plane and not know who was picking up my kid that afternoon. But it was a tough season because something had to give. And my husband said, hey, I think maybe we need to move, to where we can have support with the kids kids because it was just a tough life. One parent was always coming, one was going. Not that that changed when we moved to be close to my family, but what changed was we had someone else that could come and step in. And sometimes the kids spent the night at my parents 2 or 3 nights a week. And that was just the season that we were in as part of getting where we were needing to go.
Yeah. Which the awesome thing is then they create those relationships with your parents too, you know? So it's like, we have to think of that as just, it's incredible time that they get to spend. So, I mean, I think, you know, what's hard is it's impossible to get it all just right and to get it perfect. And even now, I think like I got to go on Tatum's field trip like 3 weeks ago. Same place you went, I think, Lucky Lad Farms.
Oh, yeah.
So you just went there too, but I got to go on the field trip with him. Was so happy to do it because there's been a lot of those that I've missed, you know, but was so happy to be there. And one of the moms came up and introduced herself to me. And she thought, first of all, that I was another kid's mom, actually, not my own son's mom. And the other kid was new to the school, if you could see where this is headed. Oh, and we've been at the school for 3 years now. And she's like, hi, introduced herself. I work at the front desk. I've never seen you before. I thought I'd introduce myself. You're, you know, AJ's mom or whatever. And I was like, oh, hi. No, we've been here for 3 years. My son's Tatum. But then I was like, you know, I am a working mom that travels. Like I do everything I can, like the important stuff. I feel like I prioritize, I make sure that I'm there, but I can't be there every week, like volunteering or like being that face that always shows up either. You know? And so it was like, that was one of those moments of like, ugh, like a little bit of mom guilt. But at the same time, it's like, I was just so happy to be there that day that I was just like, it rolled off pretty quickly, you know, but it was actually very funny. It was like, no, we've been around a little bit. So
I completely have been in that situation. But let's talk about some of the sacrifices that we have made so we do show up for our kids when they need us. I can think back to when kids might have a soccer game at like 5 o'clock. And I had an area that I was over that was about a 5-hour drive. And I remember having to go there for the day. So I would get up sometimes at 3, 4 in the morning and hit the road so I could go to my market, do what I needed to do, and be back for the soccer game. So I could spend less nights. Even if that meant that I had to turn around and go back out another 5 hours, I was able to do those things. So I didn't miss moments. And sometimes life isn't as always that flexible to where we can make those extra sacrifices. But I just know that stands out to me. Lots of windshield time to be there for all the things.
Yeah. And that makes me think of so many times I took that 5 a.m. flight or the 11 p.m. flight or whatever to like just be gone from home as little as possible. But also I would say that's something that's evolved a bit in me. Like I kind of have like a rule, unless it's like just there's absolutely no other option. Like I'm not going to lose a whole night's sleep because I also realize when I get back home, I'm not worth anything. Like those times I do an all night flight and it's like I get home and I have to sleep or I'm like at risk of then getting sick. And that's not helpful either. You know, so like that's something that's evolved for me a little bit, that like some of those investments that I made in those ways that ended up hurting me like physically or just mental capacity or whatever, I've changed a little because I want to be able to show up and be present when I actually am there.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk about the entrepreneur side, because I think you and I have both lived that, right? We've been the grinding corporate mom. We've also been the grinding entrepreneur mom. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily get easier just because you work for yourself. And sometimes perception of what other people think we may do is very different from the reality of that. And then you're almost battling the perception because people think, oh, they work from home. They are their own boss. What they do isn't quite as important. So I think we could talk a minute about this, because I know we have lots of entrepreneurs that are probably tuning in and they feel lonely. Like nobody gets what I do.
Yeah, I think it is. It can be a very lonely place. And there are definitely times when people are like, hey, can you, go hang out at this time or do this thing? And I'm like, well, I don't have meetings at that time, but I have other things that I need to do. And I think the reality is, as an entrepreneur, you can be on 100% of the time for work if you want to. There's always something to do. Right. So it's a matter of like, okay, let's figure out what those boundaries are. And they're almost more difficult. They're more difficult to set, I think, when you're an entrepreneur. And there's nobody necessarily that you're working alongside that's going to do it for you. That's going to be like, hey, I noticed you sent me a messenger message at like 11 p.m. What are you doing? No one's asking that.
No.
They're just letting you do it. Right.
Right.
So I think that's really key in figuring out like, what are those boundaries and setting them for yourself. And that's always a struggle for me. It really is.
It really is. And working from home can be a completely different animal as well, like as an entrepreneur or if you're an employee working at home, because there is that perception that somebody's always available, right? Like you might have random people knock on your door throughout the day and delivery people or people that want to talk. And there's always those constant interruptions that can be derailers if you don't allow yourself to just stay focused. And it's okay not to answer the door. It's okay to let somebody ring the doorbell. It's okay to let your dog bark while you're on a Zoom. Like those types of things, I think, are ways that I've been able to get through the things that would normally just be a big struggle.
That's so good. Well, let's talk about that side of it then too, because we've talked a little bit about like, how do we make sure we're there for the kids, the family? How do we make sure we're getting our stuff done, right? On the other side, like, so great example, you know, that you just gave of like, nope, I'm in my office. Like this is office time. I think that's really helpful, like sort of setting office hours.
Yeah.
Like here's when I'm in the office. And then for sure having time where you're not available is key. Even if it's 30 minutes and you're like, everybody in this house puts their phone in a basket for 30 minutes at night or an hour or whatever it is, but like separating that time, you know?
Right. For me, I think sometimes working out of the home, whether I'm, you know, being an entrepreneur or whether I'm working for someone, it's important for me to get out. And I use that time like to go walk and just, that's when my creative stuff comes out. Like that's when I can think. And I always had a boss one time that always said, you get the best ideas in the shower. And that's like second for me to, I get the best ideas when I'm taking a walk. It's inspiring, it's uplifting. So you have to find that thing that makes you feel like yourself. And for me, like it's not walking on a treadmill. Like that's terrible to me. Will I do it? Yes. But I much prefer to like walk around the neighborhood and hear dogs barking, smell all the smells, see the people going back and forth. It just gets my mind flowing. And then I feel like me. And then I feel like then I can knock out things really quickly. And then I'm struggling in the house. I'll go sit in my car and I'll work from the driveway. And I think it's because when I was early in my career, we literally worked from everywhere. And I would pull up to where I could borrow their Wi-Fi and I would knock out reports before I would go pick the kids up from the babysitter. And that's where I learned how to just literally work from everywhere. And I could just get tasks knocked out because you don't have the disturbances of, there goes the laundry, or there's the dishwasher, or, you know, the cat needs me again, or nope, this time it's the dog. You know, there's always somebody that's going to need you 24/7. So I feel like when I'm in my car, there's literally nothing that's going to keep me from knocking something out. And sometimes I did a call last night from my car, like at 9:00 at night.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
I love that. And I think the point is like being aware of your surroundings, right? Like what is distracting you? There's so many times I sit down to do something and all of a sudden some notification, something happens. And before I know it, I was like, what am I doing again? You know, and time passes. And so I think it's so key to like, and this is funny because we train other people to do this, right?
Yes.
Throughout our career where we're like, hey, set a timer, you know,
Yep.
if you're engaging on social media and making sure that you're, you know, loving on people's posts, like set a timer for 15 minutes so you don't just get caught watching cat videos or scrolling or
Right.
whatever. And I think it's good advice for us too, right? Like just making sure that we're like aware of what's going on around us. For you, getting that energy from a walk. The amount of voice memos I get from you while you're walking is a lot. And it's awesome though. And I love it. And I love hearing the ideas flow out of you, you know, when you're doing that. And I think that's key. Like sometimes we just have to like, kind of break the mold. Mark Batterson, one of my favorite authors, says change of place plus change of pace equals change of perspective. And that's exactly what you're doing in those moments, right? Like you're out, you're getting out, you're changing the pace, you're doing something else. I always use that when I like go to Mexico or something, like same thing. Like as soon as I get away, I'm immediately going, okay, let me evaluate my life. Let me dream about what could be next. Let me think of the next new idea. And so I think that's really key, even if it's sitting in your driveway in your car, like whatever changes the subject a little bit for you to clear the space for that, like really just good work is awesome.
It just takes the lid right off.
When you're grinding from dawn to done because your vision demands it, your body needs more than motivation. It needs real health infrastructure. That's why the Healthy Hustle is powered by Immunotec, a leader in immune health research for over 4 decades. With patented science focused on glutathione production, the body's master antioxidant, Immunotec delivers clean label, vegan-friendly support for your immune system, energy, recovery, and overall performance. So whatever your training session, pitch meeting, or creative sprint looks like, trust your body to keep pace. Because the hustle doesn't wait and your health can't either. Visit Immunotec.com and take command of your immune advantage. Immunotec, the science of living better.
So it's really funny, Maribeth, because I remember in high school and college, I never used a paper planner. And I remember just keeping everything in my mind. And I will say, I think it maybe helped make me really sharp because I wouldn't forget things. I wouldn't ever write down what time I was working. I just kept it up here. But then I had this really amazing trainer when I was with a really big company, and she was teaching me, how to calendar management. And I was like, whoa, this is like really out there for me. This is so not my wheelhouse, because I'm this perfect hybrid of like an A and a B personality. Like some things I'm super type A, and then other things I'm like, whatever, it's going to be fine. Everything will work out. So I remember she was like, you really need to get a paper planner, because, I was like really young for my age. That's like I like to think. And we had our Blackberries and all the things, and I would put everything in my calendar. I was doing it the right way. And then somebody was like, try a paper planner. And it literally was life-changing for me, because for some reason, if you don't make something tangible, it doesn't have the same impact. So the company I was with actually trained on the Franklin Covey system, which was your big rocks and then your little rocks. And so I think I still look at my calendar and my day-to-day like this, where I have my big rocks. So every day there's like 3 or 4 things that have to be done. And I know that there's some things on my little rock list that are going to be on there for a week or 2, and it's okay. Like, just for instance, birthday party invites for my daughter's birthday party that's in 10 days. They just went out yesterday, and I'm totally fine with it.
I'm impressed that you had invites at all. That's pretty good.
I know. Who am I? I texted
good.
the invite and followed it up with a snail mail. Like, I was really proud of myself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is amazing.
But definitely looks different from what we can see on social media, because I think right now we are in the midst of the trad wife culture, and we can see so many day-to-days, which we can talk about that here in just a minute.
Yeah.
We see so many day-to-days that seem perfect, and everybody has their schedule together, and it looks like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. But what do you think the reality of that is? I know that's not my reality. Like, my day-to-day is never perfect. I have a routine, but usually it can fall by the wayside. But I think being able to turn on a dime and recover from it is what keeps me going. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's essential. Like, there was just a day this week, I think I texted you, that I had spent 4 hours driving in the car that I was not planning on in that day, But then it's like, okay, you get to the end of the day and it's like, you call it the big rocks. We used to do an illustration like that all the time in like youth group settings, right? Like putting those big rocks in first, because then, you can fit the little ones, and finally you fit the tiny pebbles, and then the water or sand, right? And then the water. So it's like figuring out like, what are those things that just still have to happen, and then making them happen somehow. Or worst case, it does get pushed to the next day,
Or the next week.
Or the next week, which can be very stressful,
Can be stressful.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the constant challenge in figuring out what those schedules look like. And, I have a hard time. First of all, I've been writing things down since I can remember, in paper planners or in something, and now in a Google Calendar or whatever. But because I can't, I'm impressed with your sharpness of being able to remember all that stuff.
Not anymore.
But that's pretty good. Just having to try to keep all those details together is just not my strong suit. I'm big picture. So like I was picking up, usually my husband picks up the kids, and I was picking up the kids a couple weeks ago, and I can never remember like where to go for each kid or exactly what time they get out. Like, I know about when, but I don't do it very often. So I pulled up to pick up Tatum a couple weeks back, and I was like in line, so I thought, and realized that like there's 2 lines, one going around one side of the building and one going around the other side. And I was blocking the path of the entire like first group. The preschoolers had to go through. And so like they had to like come out, and the ladies like directing the traffic to back everyone up because I was blocking the drive-through part. And it was just like so embarrassing, but just like a perfect example of like, you know what, like I don't usually do this part of the routine. Today I'm doing it, and here I am. I'm like the mom that's, in the wrong spot. And the funny thing was I had to pick them up again like a little while later, and I saw another dad do it. And I was like, dude, I got you. Like, it's fine. It's going to be all right. You just can't block that one driveway. So
were you like all flushed and hot? When things like that happen to me, I just feel so like my head, my ears.
My sunglasses went on. That's what happened. I was like, it's very sunny out all of a sudden. Like, no one can see me if I'm wearing these big glasses.
Nobody's going to recognize your blonde hair.
Nobody will know. No one will know.
I love it. I remember times when the kids were at a different school. It was my hometown, so there was, a little bit more laid back, knew everybody still, but I would always think that I had time to do one more thing before it was pickup time. That was my whole mantra. I can just do this. Like, I can do this. One more thing. Isn't that Ed Milet's thing? Just like one more.
Yeah.
So I lived by that way before it was a thing, but it was like always burning me or my family because I would always roll up just a little bit late, but usually at the end of the line. But I remember the day that I forgot. And I was rolling up and they were already walking down the street. I don't know where they were going, but I was able to get them like 2/3 down the street. But I'm just lucky nobody else did, like you can't do that everywhere. And right. I thought, oh my gosh. And I didn't think as much about it then as I do now. And I think if I saw that happen now, I'd be like, where's the mom? But at the time I was like, oh, well, sorry,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's embarrassing and terrible. And like when our oldest went to middle school, I remember being shocked that like the school got out and they just opened the doors and let them all out and locked the doors and everybody went home. And there was one time when like Chris thought I was getting the kids and I thought he was, and Asher was left out on a park bench. Poor Asher. And I remember we like realized it and I pull up to get him and he's just sitting there alone on the park bench. And I was shocked like that everybody left. And there he was by himself. And so that was the beginning of our kids having cell phones. Right at that moment, I was like, okay, we're getting cell phones now because I'm never letting this happen again, But I mean, the reality is we just can't get it all right. Like we tried the best we can, but we can't, we're just human.
Yeah, we are. And I think, dinners, that's one thing that pops up. There's so much pressure around that. Going back to the trad wife culture, like there's all these perfect meals all over social media. And how do they do that? And I know for me, I can actually cook. Like people probably don't know it, but I don't have the time.
This is the announcement. Everyone.
Is the announcement. Yes, I used to be able to cook. Like so we were sitting at the table a few weeks ago. Mind you, Gunner's 18. I know you have an 18-year-old and he's getting ready to graduate. So I know our time with him at family dinners is narrowing, and I still can't get it right. Like he even said, and Nick, and they said it in such a good spirit.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
Man, like mom's cooking's really gone downhill.
That's a good spirit.
They're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like thinking, I need a meal plan on Sunday nights so I can have my stuff together and like think that he's going to be home and then I'll get a meal ready. And then he's like, just kidding, I'm not going to be home. So then I stopped sweating it. And then of course, the last few weeks I'm like, no, it's October. May is coming, Oh, yeah. So I'm going to make his favorite, potato chip chicken. Well, Gunner's got this really great business that he started, which I love the entrepreneur side of him. But I knew he was going to go live on a live auction site at 8:00. And we usually eat at 5:00, mind you, 5 or 5:30, because my husband doesn't eat all day and he comes home really hungry. So we're usually eating quickly. And that's why I'll just throw something together. So he lets me off the hook pretty easily. I'm like, you want eggs or ground beef? Because that's what you're getting. but I was like,
on a paper plate.
On a paper plate, yeah. But with Gunner's home, I do try because like he doesn't care, but I know he's going to remember what mom made someday. And I'm trying to keep him from thinking, gosh, my mom was this awful cook. All I had was scrambled eggs and grilled beef, So I'm like making dinner. And I thought it would be ready by 7:30. And of course, like, I remember pulling it out of the oven the other night and everybody's waiting. And then I'm like, oh, the chicken's done, isn't it? And they were like, maybe not. So I had to put it back in for like 10 minutes. Of course, then Gunner's like stuffing his face just to get ready in time. So he had to go live on his auction. And like, it's like, slow down. I'm like, I failed, And so I'm like, that's just the reality. I'm like, it's really hard sometimes. And I'm like, you know what? Like, it's great. You had a meal. It was good. Even though you had to wait 10 minutes longer, actually 2 hours longer. But who's counting, And I think that it's good for him to see that. Like, I will say, like, I'll try to do everything, and sometimes it's just not perfect. And I think I'm really fortunate that everybody likes to give me grace. And I just had to learn how to give myself grace.
You know, one of the most important things I think that our kids get to see us do, though, is pivot and adjust to when that stuff happens. Like, what a life skill that they need. And I think if we were able to get it all right all the time, you know, if our careers were always soaring at the top of the peak of what they could be, and, you know, the potato chip chicken is perfect and comes out at the right time, you know, if all of that was in order, they wouldn't get to see us in the struggle. And that's just real life. And like, I want them to see how we react. Hopefully we do a good job, but like, I want them to see us work through that so that they know that it's okay for that to be part of life. And they're going to have to roll with the punches too, just like we do.
It's so true. And I think about what they learn from seeing their parents do this. And I think your kids have seen it. My kids have seen it. Ellie Kate doesn't remember everything, but Gunnar does. He remembers me as the mom that was traveling all the time. And then he also got to have me home for 6 years without having to travel. And then he's seen me go back into that life where sometimes I travel more than others. But I won't ever forget, there was a time when I had to say no, as a mom. You want to be able to say yes. You want to be the yes mom. And he was wanting a desk or something. I don't know. He was at that age where kids can be really, like, teenage boys are harder than you think, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thank God. Like, he's amazing. We're a great place. But he was a tough age, I think. And he, had a lot going on. And I remember having to tell him, no, we can't get that now. But then I also had said, like, things are going to change because this is all the things that I'm doing in my business. And, and so he was able to see how quickly you can flip it and how quickly you can make an impact. And I just remember like having to have that truthful conversation, because you don't want your kids to know, like, oh, things are tight at this point, or, oh, things are great. You just don't want them to worry about that. But then there comes a point in time, I think you need to have those conversations. Just like, we can't always get everything we want. Right. And that was really hard for me. But I think that moment taught him so much that's making him so successful as an entrepreneur at 18 years old right now, because he's learned, and like, he learns what you can do when you dig in and you make things happen.
That's huge. Chris said one time, my husband, that when we have had seasons where we've had to say no more than other seasons, he's like, you know what? I don't even think that this was like for us. Like, this was for our kids. Like, our kids needed to live through what this was like and to understand what it's like to say no to things, and, to see kind of like the ebb and flow of what it looks like to be an entrepreneur or to be anybody, like there's great seasons and there's hard seasons. And I think now, there's been a handful of times when one of the boys has said, hey, Mom, thanks so much for working so hard for us. And it's like, those are the moments where you're like, oh, thank God they saw, like, they realized and they understood all of those times when we did have to work long, or we did have to be away or whatever, that they understood that we were working for them. We were showing them what that looks like. And then great example that, Gunnar now knows what it's like to do his own hustle, and to get out there and do that. And so it's amazing.
I love that it's created gratitude by watching, right? And sometimes it doesn't happen immediately, but I think just like your kids saying, thank you so much for working so hard. I hear thank you for everything, like things that he wouldn't have to thank me for. And I think that is just kind of a culmination of everything he's watched over the years. I think it's really cool that our kids have grown up to be thankful.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. We want that richness in them, and that wisdom from seeing real life. And I think that's a huge part of it.
And seeing you through the struggle, right?
Right.
Like knowing that we're not accepting this. This isn't final. We can fix this, and
exactly.
Handling everything with, here's the situation, here's where we're at, and here's what we're going to do to fix it.
Yep. And we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So what does just real quick, what does a day in the life look like for you, Mandy? I know we talked about the trad wife concept. Yes. If you're listening, you're like, what do you guys mean? It's like traditional wife, right? So we're really glamorizing right now, like sourdough bread making, which I've done a little bit of. It's kind of fun. But just, all of the things of like curating this perfect, beautiful life. But what does real life look like?
Real life for me is getting up so I can have my coffee before the house gets up. And that doesn't always happen. I would love that. The reality of it is that sometimes happens like 3-4 days a week because my daughter usually gets out of bed early on Saturdays. Like everybody else will sleep if they need to. She'll get
Not her.
She's a 6 a.m. riser on a weekend. So I do know that about myself. If I don't have time to myself to get my thoughts gathered in the morning, it's probably going to be a challenging day. So for me, I've known that. And if I get up early, we're good. So I get up at 5. I start the coffee. I make coffee. And then, I try to get a load of laundry started. That's another little hack. I kind of like all over my laundry because it's so easy to get behind. And when you're behind with your laundry, it can feel really overwhelming. So every morning without fail, I start the coffee and I start a load of laundry. And for me, it's sitting down and having my coffee. I look at devotions, I read a little bit of scripture, and that helps me get my head set for the day.
Love it.
What about you?
Similar, but different. I don't get up at 5. I wish I did. Chris gets up at 5. He starts the coffee, and then sometimes he's like trying to coax me to get out of bed with a cup of coffee.
This is awesome.
It's more like that. I'm not naturally a morning person, but at the same token, I also do know that I have to have like a minute before the day gets too crazy. But typically for me, what it looks like these days is getting up, having a cup of coffee, helping the kids get out the door, making breakfast. Like my kids actually eat in the car right now.
This
like
is
you were talking
great.
about earlier. I mean, they have a 25-minute drive.
Yeah.
And so I have to get them up so much earlier, so they eat in the car. So like 2 of them have a hot chocolate, 1 has a coffee, they have their food. So I get all that stuff ready, send them off for the day. And then I kind of have my time. So that's when it's like my dog just knows the whole routine, Yeti. So Yeti's like ready. As soon as they leave, he's like, let's go. And if it's nice out, we sit on the back patio. And if it's a little cooler, then we sit in the living room. So he just knows. He's got the routine down. And there are certainly days when something goes awry and I don't get that time. But just like what you were describing, like I really need it. And I think it sets the tone for the whole rest of the entire day, to invest that time. And so for me, it's Bible reading, it's journaling, and then sometimes another like inspirational book that I'm looking at as well. So that's kind of how it all starts. And then typically it's like work meetings interspersed with loads of laundry, like you're saying, and just phone calls and all the things that need to happen until it's time for kids to come back home. And I don't know, maybe sometimes I make a snack and sometimes I'm like, have fun in the pantry and nothing happens. So,
well, I love that. I think the neat thing is prioritizing kid time. And that's something I learned to do is keep that time separate. Because I remember being a young mom and being in the pickup line on my phone. And then somebody said something. I don't even remember who it was. At some point, they were talking about the moms on their phones while their kids got in the car. And it made me really pause and think about it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, gosh, how does that make my kid feel that I don't pause to greet them and say hello? And how's their day? So from that point forward, I made it such a point and to just be a present mom from the time I picked them up and give them, a good hour or maybe longer to where they feel like I'm invested in them, how their day went, and creating some sort of a memory after school. And so when I had an opportunity to do that, when I wasn't traveling as much, I really was focused on, once I get my kids from school as an entrepreneur, I would pick my kids up and then it was all about them until they went to bed. And then I would do whatever I didn't get done throughout the day after 8 o'clock. And that was what worked for me. And it helped me keep my kids a priority. And I still try to do that when I pick up Ellie Kate, even though Gunner, his schedule's all over the place, being 18 and in baseball and driving himself around. But now I'm picking up Ellie Kate. And so I try to make sure that once I know she's in the car, I'm off limits until it comes time where she's ready to play by herself or entertain herself. And then maybe there's a few things that I can do while she's doing that until she goes to bed. And then I can just figure out what else I need to do.
Yeah.
What I didn't get done. Big rocks, little rocks. Hopefully those big rocks are all done by the time I get her.
Yes, hopefully. I interviewed a woman. This was probably like maybe 5 years ago now. It was quite a long time ago. And she was maybe say 12 to 15 years older than me. And I just remember like I was really in it. I was traveling so much. We had all 4 of the boys. Like, it was just a really hard season. And I'm interviewing her on a Zoom interview. And I remember she said something that it ended up really encouraging me. And she said, when I was your age and my kids were younger and I was traveling for work, she's like, when I would get home, I would plan on, putting away my computer, putting away my phone, and just for at least, she said it would last about 15 minutes. They'd have 100% of my attention. Mm-hmm. I'd make sure that when they were talking to me, they saw my eyes. I would make sure that I was just really invested in what they're doing. And she goes, about 15 minutes later, they were over me. And they were like moving on to the next thing, and like, how true is that? But they got to see that I was prioritizing them. Yeah. I was looking in their face. I was asking about their day. I was present. And then, they're moving on to other things. And I also think at that point too, like, it's okay to then tell our kids like, hey, mom's got to go make a phone call. So I need you to give me 10 minutes or whatever, and you can do this. And to like show them also that you can have some boundaries as it relates to that, Totally. When you need to work or you're going after a big goal and it's something that really you rally the whole family behind because it's a big deal.
I saw something the other day at Starbucks that I just wanted to get out and like applaud the mom, and I probably should have, but I had gone in with Ella Kate after school and I came out and Ella Kate's like, I can't remember the boy's name. She saw a classmate and she was so excited. And it was clear that the mom was in work clothes and she had her laptop out. And so I'm sure it was a situation of struggling with not getting everything done before she had to pick up the kids. She took him to Starbucks and sat outside, and he sat next to her while she had her laptop up. And I thought, isn't that like a pretty accurate picture of what a working mom sometimes has to look like?
Yeah. Great example. Okay, so like, what does the rest of the day look like for you then? After you get hopefully a really great start and have your coffee?
Yeah. Which happens half the time, just realistically. But I always have to get my daughter up at 6. So her or my husband, one of us will open her door. It's a whole process. I like to be the gentle waker upper, right? Because nobody wants to be bombarded in the morning. So I'm like, Ella Kate. So I'll open her door and then I'll go, usually I'll go brush my teeth at that point. Have to brush off the coffee. And then I'll come back and then the light comes on and I start her bath. And so it gives her time to what's going to make her feel her best. I've learned that about her. If you just like get her out of bed, like you're prying the girl. So she needs a minute to come into her own. She does her bath. And then we go to the kitchen. She eats her breakfast after she gets dressed. Forgot that part. She eats her breakfast and then I'll have her brush her teeth and then I do her hair. And I am not the fancy hair mom. So all these moms that have these cute braids and all the Pinterest hair, that is not me. We're doing really, really well to have a cute little messy bun, a low pony, a mid pony, a high pony.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe a braid.
You have this down.
Yeah, I have this down. And that is one thing I've had to let go because I think the struggle that can create, like, keep your head still. No, like, that is not worth it to me for the cute hair, and I know every child is different. For us, I know that we aren't ready for that yet. And I'm certainly not ready to learn all those fancy hairstyles because sometimes I barely get my to-do list done. So that's one thing I've had to give up. And I've just had to stop thinking about what other people think and know that I'm doing the best I can. They do things that I don't, but I do things they don't. Right? So you just can't worry about what other moms do. We just all stay in our lane, lift each other up, and, help each other be the best that we can be.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in to The Healthy Hustle. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we would love to hear from you. So make sure to drop in the comments what you would like to know from us, and we'll be taking questions on our next episodes.
Thanks, guys. Bye.